Hello, welcome to Quackalope. Thank you for being here. Conventions are back in swing, some way, somehow, some form or fashion. That's my phrase. That's the words I was looking for. We went to 3 this year.
We went to GenCon, we went to Origins, and then we went to PAX Unplugged. And this video is kind of going to give you a little bit of a synopsis, our takeaways from those 3 conventions, kind of talk about our experiences, our impressions.
Things we learned along the way, and whether or not you should try to go to any or all of these conventions yourself next year. So there's some interesting context here. These are the first conventions that have happened in our community for the better part of a year and a half. GenCon happened first, then Origins about 2 weeks later. Origins released their date. GenCon then, I think, cut them to the punch. Then after that, we had Essen BGGCon. Essen Spiel is over in Germany.
Yep.
We didn't feel like crossing the country at the moment. BGGCon was down in Texas.
Too much going on in our lives right then to attend that one.
We were moving into this new studio. I believe we were painting the walls at that time. And then PAX Unplugged is the last one of the year.
And so we're kind of going to dive into different categories. We're going to talk about the community, the shopping, playing games at the different cons, the convention centers, expectations for next year, and then rank them. Because I'm interested in hearing which one you like the most and would say you should attend next year, hands down.
Overall community at both. Because that's what we're going for, right?
Yeah.
Like it's when it comes down to it, it's the publishers, the creators, and the fans that are there.
So I think GenCon had the most. GenCon is the biggest. I think it had
Which is
the most.
Normal.
The one thing about it being first is that I think some of the bigger name publishers were nervous and hesitant to come. I think besides for that, it had the most variety. It had the most knick-knack booths. It had the most big names. It had the most indies. I think it had the widest spread, but didn't specialize in any specific area.
Now, for context, I have been to conventions before the world quit.
Okay.
And you have not.
I have not.
So, for my context, GenCon was smaller than it had ever been before. It felt like Origins pre-pandemic, right? GenCon was missing Asmodee. It was missing Fantasy Flight. It was missing Kingdom Death. It was missing Cool Mini or Not. There were so many larger booths that weren't there, which was good and bad in some ways. Now, an interesting tidbit, just something that I picked up along the ropes, is booths always buy their spot.
And they buy them years in advance and kind of set their
And when everything was
down.
delayed, things got shifted, and then a lot of larger names backed out. And so that space this year was filled with medium to smaller publishers. Yeah. There was a larger window, I think, for indie and small booth publishers, and they did really well at the convention because those giant booths weren't taking up every cricks and corner, pushing them off to the sides. Here's the thing. I believe this is the only year, and correct me if I'm wrong, I'd love to have an official statement down below letting me know that this isn't the case. I believe this is the only year where the booth that you buy, the money that you put in to be at the convention, doesn't buy you in
for the next year.
Yeah,
I think we've heard that.
And to me, I just think that's unfair. I think that's wrong. I think if people abdicated their spot and your policy for years has been go at the place you claim when you show up is the place you own going into next year, you get first dibs on paying for that spot. I'm sorry. I think that if people showed up for 2021, they deserve their spot. And big booths can step to the side. They can buy enough space or enough rooms or enough locations to allow the smaller publishers and the medium publishers to have the place they've staked. It's been the policy up to now. I could be wrong on this. This is just hearsay and speculation. Yeah. I've heard no official words. But if that is the case, it does to me put a strike against GenCon.
I think it does a disservice to the people who stepped up and made this con possible.
Origins,
I felt like was the indie publisher con. I felt like all of the indie publishers came out of their nooks and crannies, and it was a very dinner-style, home-based con. It happened to have been in the state that we live in, which was super convenient, but I felt like it was a lot smaller. I mean, it was smaller.
Yeah, which has been Origins from across the board. I mean, it was about half the size it normally is this year.
It was very homey.
Well, that's how Origins typically feels. Origins is like the small brother to GenCon, and it really was lovely. Like, it was a nice walk around, very, very comforting. GenCon was still a bit overwhelming.
Yeah.
Origins was right there in the sweet spot of sit down, play games, have fun, talk with people. You don't feel too rushed, but there's still enough to do to keep you entertained for two or 2.5 days. PAX Unplugged, we just finished that up.
PAX Unplugged is where I think would be the sweet spot. I know you feel like Origins is the sweet spot. I felt like PAX Unplugged was kind of the middle ground. There were enough big names that there was enough to do, and there was enough indie publishers that had been able to make a presence there. I felt like it was a lot more gaming focused than industry and, I don't know, like geek focused. I felt like GenCon is geek focused and PAX Unplugged was board game focused, which is, PAX is usually, I heard about it, that PAX is usually a video game convention.
Well, PAX Unplugged is not.
Right, no, PAX
as a whole.
PAX as a whole is usually a video game. PAX Unplugged is literally unplugging it and it's tabletop games, which was interesting to me, and I felt like it really did that well.
Yeah, PAX was sort of end of the year. You know, we had positive results from GenCon and Origins, so I think a lot of people were more comfortable coming out. Had a ton of names there. And PAX flies in people. Like, Shut Up Sit Down was there hosting some panels and events. And it's because PAX is big enough that they have the leverage to bring out some companies, some titles, and some names that just wouldn't go to other board game conventions because they don't have the funding. They don't have the background of this doesn't have to be where all their money is made. PAX was cool. PAX was a lot of fun. I think overall, takeaway from all three conventions is that the experience overall this year has been positive, with the same caveats that conventions for me have always had.
Yeah.
Crowds, anxiety, overwhelming. There was one big thing that was a bottleneck to my experience across all three.
Okay.
And that's going to be mask blindness.
Okay. Yeah. I think it is weird when you cannot recognize your friends because they are wearing a mask and they're standing like 2 feet away from you.
Now, it's necessary this year.
Yeah,
it's part of the context for getting back together, and I don't think anyone was arguing against that. But the biggest issue for me is everyone was talking about the fact that you just can't see anyone.
Yeah.
You walk into a room of 20 people, all of them you know, and you're still doing a hard time to pick out exactly who is who.
Yep.
And people started recognizing us more and more as the conventions went on.
That was what I was going to point out. Our Quackalope community, I feel like, has been growing in physical presence at the conventions. We leave out these little rubber ducks, and people are starting to actually take them away from the booths and give them back to us.
At GenCon, I think we got stopped like 20, 30 times.
Less. I think it's been incrementally getting bigger.
At PAX, I think we got stopped 80, maybe 100 times.
It was definitely double, triple the amount.
Every hallway, people were coming up and being like, I stole a duck, I found a duck, I love what you do, thanks so much for being around, thanks so much for being here. And that was so cool, and it's nice to have kind of some of those barriers that are set up with a mask being broken down, and people learning how to like work and operate in this season that we're in. Takeaways, any other major takeaways, positive or negatives from the giant convention space?
We're talking about the community specifically, the people.
Yeah.
I think a lot more content creators and like not publishers but game designers were at PAX versus Origins and GenCon, which was really nice. I got to see some friends that I don't usually get to see.
There were definitely more people out of the woodworks. Origins and GenCon for me, I think they did double dip on their own selection a little bit, but I also thought they had a really good selection, a really good curated selection of indies. Whereas PAX, I didn't feel like brought out as many people that were fun to discover, which is different for me. I felt like GenCon had more people for me to discover than PAX did.
Okay.
Which could just be the case of one coming later in the year.
Yeah.
But if I'm thinking through the booths and the booths of like people who I knew before convention started, GenCon or PAX, I don't think PAX came anywhere close to the amount of cool little side things. Same's true for like the Unpub Hall and everything else that was going on. Let's talk about shopping specifically.
So shopping. Kind of like piggybacking off of the community. I feel like GenCon was the geek. Like, there are so much more geek-related booths. Yeah. Like, costumes and bags and knickknacks and stickers and artwork. There was a huge artwork hall at the back of GenCon with just a lot of artists.
PAX was a lot more games.
PAX was a lot more game-focused. There was, like, 1 or 2 knickknack booths, which I commented that I was sad about because I like the knickknacks. But it was just a different focus to me.
Origins was about playing?
Origins, yeah. You actually, to get to the booths, you had to walk through the play hall, which is the opposite usually of a lot of the other conventions. And I feel like Origins was prioritizing playing the games.
Yeah.
And it it had just a smaller version of the ratio of Gen Con. I feel like it had enough knick-knack booths, enough art booths, enough game booths, and it was just a smaller size of Gen Con.
So, swinging down, there's two things that you go to conventions to do. Playing and shopping.
Yes.
Let's talk about shopping to start with.
I feel like Gen Con takes the win in what you were able to get at Gen Con and shop for your board game needs, with PAX coming in at a strong second. They had that whole, one local game store had a whole area in the back where you can find some like really cool finds.
I think PAX takes the cake for me personally.
Really?
I think with the used game hall, some of the trades that were happening with the BGG communities and Facebook communities, combined with some of the exclusives that were there at PAX, I think a lot of people had their wind under their sails a lot better than they did leading up to Gen Con. Because they've all been dealing with and struggling with the shipping crisis.
Yeah. Oh my.
I think going into next year, that might shift and change a little bit. A lot of people save their big releases for Gen Con specifically.
Yeah.
But I don't know. Right now, PAX is the strongest con for shopping for me.
I thought Gen Con was pretty... I thought Gen Con was stronger. And like I said, just Origins was smaller.
Origins is there in the middle, right?
So playing.
I
think Origin takes the cake for
100%.
playing. Granted, we didn't get to go down to BGG Con, which I heard was... also prioritizes playing over the shopping experience. I think... And then Gen Con and PAX, I think, are the absolute worst to play games at.
I do not want to demo or play games at Gen Con. This year was the slowest that it's ever been, and still I have no incentive to demo or play.
Speaking about the slowness, I think a lot of companies appreciated the fact that their booths were not packed.
Mm-hmm.
People were able to get up close, see the games, talk to the people at the booths, and buy. I think a lot of booths were so happy with how well they did at these cons. They were pleasantly surprised. I think the smaller crowds actually facilitate more shopping.
Yeah. Talking about PAX Gen Con, it's got to be Gen Con's the worst. PAX is next, because you could go off to little corners and sub-corners and play with your own community, but then Origins is the gaming convention. If you want to come, sit down, play games with friends, Origins is the place to be. Convention centers.
Oh my god. Okay.
I will take a step back.
Philadelphia's the absolute
just
worst.
Let you...
Oh. You're just gonna stretch and show your belly button on camera?
Just working on it.
Philadelphia's the absolute worst. And that also had somewhat to do with their policies for COVID this year. They picked the one entrance that was the farthest from everywhere else to have everyone go enter through. And lines were looping 3 different times, entering on Saturday morning.
They only had one dedicated entrance.
Yeah.
It was as far away from every accessible convention hall door and location
and hotel
possible.
Yeah, all the hotels are like on the opposite side. It was just really inconvenient.
And then on top of that, PAX has been known. So Philadelphia Convention Center has been known before the pandemic happened as the worst convention center. The staff are oftentimes hard to work with, hard to deal with. This isn't PAX Unplugged staff. The enforcers for PAX Unplugged are fantastic.
Yep.
One of the best operating teams out there. But the convention center specifically has weird mandates around media. They're all union, so all of them don't care across the board. And that's to say, you can find some people that are helpful, but they have weird policies and things that just don't seem to fall through. The first year I went to PAX, they had big security lines. They had first established metal detectors, and you could walk through with anything. They didn't care. They didn't check your bag. Things didn't go off. It didn't matter. It didn't matter at all. And everyone was commenting about that. Like, they had this artificial security that was designed around pretending to make you safe, and they didn't actually care to enforce the rules that they'd placed through. Everyone was mentioning it.
I think that translated also to this year as
This
well.
year, I saw a guy walk through with liquor. Like, you're not allowed to have it, and I understand why.
I saw guys with actual, like, weapons, like actual knives.
I saw knives come in. It didn't matter, and I get frustrated with a place that puts in restrictions that slow down traffic, that make it hard to process through, that then don't take the time to actually care to enforce those. Yeah. And the COVID vaccine is the biggest note for me. Yeah. We had to wear a bracelet, which was fine, and we had to get our pass, but I put out a video trying to let people know that it would be hard to get in, that it would be enforced, that like they were really serious about it this year. And as far as I'm concerned, I don't feel like they were. I could have scanned anyone's card, put in any information into the app on my phone, and I would have got through. They didn't scan my phone. They didn't scan your phone.
No.
They didn't take the time to verify.
They didn't really take a look at the fact that it was your identity
they
on the phone.
They half glanced at it.
Yeah.
And from that point on, it just didn't matter. We had people saying that they could have got in with anyone's card, anyone's phone,
I feel
anyone's
like
ID.
If the organization doesn't take the restrictions that they are imposing seriously, it makes the people who are attending not want to take them seriously as well.
It's not even that. It's the fact that the restrictions they placed made the event less enjoyable. They made it harder to get in. They elongated the lines, made people crowd together. Like, you want to talk about our policies, everyone outside was all lumped together in a line, compacted, until we got inside. And then you don't even care to enforce the things that you're trying that are bottlenecking the system. So, big complaint with the Philadelphia Convention Center. It's going to take the low bar for me. When we get back to GenCon and Orgins.
Indianapolis and Columbus. So GenCon, I can't really give such a fair analysis of because I kind of stayed huddled up against you basically the whole con. I didn't really explore it that much.
Sure.
Origins, I did explore. I really liked the Columbus Convention Center. I thought it was very organized. It was cleanly. It was accessible. Yeah. I liked the Columbus Convention Center, and I think I would have liked the Indianapolis Convention Center with all the different little rooms.
I think I like, and this is a hard one because they both downgraded a little bit.
Yeah.
But I think I like Columbus as a city more than I like Indianapolis as a city.
Okay.
But I like the Indiana Convention Center more than I like the Columbus Convention Center.
Why?
And part of it's because it takes you away from the city. The Indiana Convention Center allows you to get into a tunnel where you never have to leave for the entire day. You could get food in there, you can explore in there, there's tons of little breakout rooms to play, and to get back to your hotel rooms, there's tunnels that you can go through and you can connect everywhere. It means I don't have to be in the city at all. Mm-hmm. And I don't really like Indianapolis that much. It's sort of a grungy city that has a lot of places that are spread out and hard to get to. But Origins is in Columbus. Columbus is actually a really lovely city. They have an Eastern market there with a ton of fresh food, a ton of great, customizable options, lots of great bars with barkeeps that know how to make really fantastic drinks. It's a really great place to live and exist for a couple days. And the center is good, but it can be a little bit hard to get around. They lock all the doors except maybe a row of them to keep homeless people from wandering in, which I understand, but it means that when you're trying to find your way back in on off hours, it can be really frustrating because you have to walk the entire block, testing every door to see which one's open, or knocking and getting someone to open the window for you.
I hear that point.
So
yeah, I like them both. They both excel far more than Philadelphia.
Philadelphia across the board. It's an interesting city to be in. It's really an aesthetic city. It's a old school, small New York City, grungy, grimy, dirty. I understand why people love it there. It's not my type of place.
No, not mine either.
Philadelphia might be one of the coolest cities to explore, though. But yeah,
that's not why I'm going to conventions.
Their convention center makes me want to not be out.
Expectations for next year.
Expectations for next year.
What do we have coming up?
Well, we're going to be doing all three of these again.
Right.
We're going to be doing Gamma, hopefully.
Okay.
Maybe Board Game Geek Con.
Okay.
BGG Con or Dice Tower.
We're going to do any Dice Towers. I was going to ask.
East, West, South. There's a lot of Dice Towers happening. Maybe Tantrum Con down in North or South Carolina. Okay. There's a lot of cool things that we're going to be trying to go to. Expectations for next year, more of the same. I'm not going to conventions on Saturdays anymore, though.
Okay. Yeah, that was one takeaway that we've evolved kind of our policy.
We both got overwhelmed.
We keep Shabbat, so attending on a Saturday is hard enough as it is, and then we both get overwhelmed at a certain point. I get overwhelmed as it all accumulates, and you get overwhelmed kind of in middle. And so we think that if we take off Saturday, if we attend, depending on the length of the convention, but if we tend to and go hard on Friday and hard on Sunday, both in the beginning and at the end recapping, we can take off Saturday.
But it might give us the opportunity to do some cool things, like find a bar we want to sit at for 6 or 7 hours and do a community meetup on Saturday where we're just off our phones playing games with people instead of actually going to the convention center. So we have some thoughts about this, and we're definitely going to be doing some things like that moving into next year. But yeah, I would highly encourage people who are going to a convention, and I know it costs a lot of money, but give yourself a little bit of a break if you can. A 6-hour period, an 8-hour period to sit down, play games, relax, and not drive so hard. Now, it is different for us because we are working as well, and that makes the process harder. It's more exhausting, it's more overwhelming, it's more that you have to do every day. We don't sit down as often, but conventions have always been hard for me, and I don't think I need to be there every day of the week to get the full experience.
I think overall, though, the experience from starting up conventions again has been very positive. I think the community has just been overall very positive. The outcome. And so for next year, I think we can just continue it and continue growing them back to where they used to be.
I'm really excited to hopefully get to a point where we have maybe the vaccination mandate enforced on our phone, but not have the masks. We'll see how the next year goes. I think our world's getting to a point where we're more and more close to a point where we can do that. There's a lot of events happening outside of our industry. But I'm excited about that because this is constantly being
is hard.
The hardest thing for me is being able to connect and reach out to people and be there. Yep. And if there's a way we can do that safely, I'd love to get back to that stage. Rankings. Where do we think people should go? And we could rank them. What are you thinking? Where should people go next year?
Well, no, I want to hear rankings like which was your favorite con overall?
Yeah.
And favorite to least favorite because I think we disagree.
This is really hard. Because when it comes to the people that I was around and got to engage with, PaxU was my favorite.
Okay.
So many people were there. Content creators and publishers and fans, and the community was like out of the woodwork.
Okay.
And that was awesome because like it was more people than we've been able to connect with ever throughout this channel. But when it comes to the actual convention itself, I think for me, this is really hard. I think for me, Origins is going to have to take the cake.
Yes, so we definitely disagree.
Because I think most of the people that I wanted to see, most of the booths that I wanted to see were at Origins. It's a little bit more relaxed, a little bit more gamer focused. I was able to focus on the city and the community and the combination of GenCon being always overwhelming and growing. PAX being in the Philadelphia Convention Center is going to make it a giant strike against it. It is frustrating to deal with, and I felt like I was always working against the people that were there. Origins had the less barrier to entry. It had a better overall feel and a better overall community, and I like that. I can't wait to maybe host an event or something at Origins next year.
It's cute because it's fun. Not cute. I don't know why I said cute.
Well, because I'm cute.
Oh yeah, you're cute.
Thank you.
I actually, so when I'm going to a convention for the socialization and for the stimulation, and therefore I think the bigger the better. And so I would rank them as PAX. Even with all the stuff with the convention center, I think PAX was my favorite.
Wow.
I had finally gotten used to crowds
I wouldn't have guessed
and
that
stuff.
At all. You drowned at PAX by the end of it.
At the very end, though. And I think that could have been mediated very easily.
Yeah, I think so.
And that's why I think it was the best.
But I was worried that ruined the whole experience.
No, PAX was my favorite. GenCon was second. And Origins was my least favorite. Because if I'm going for the stimulation, then I want to take it to the ultimate max. And Origins was just like, this could have been in my backyard.
With this conversation, then, you are going to have to make that video dealing with anxiety at a convention.
Oh, yeah. I figured out my things.
Because this is weird for me to hear you be like,
which is why I wanted to give the rankings.
I'm going to meet people. Why not do it all and come home broken?
Yes.
And I'm sitting here like, no, I'd like to, see my people and, network and connect, but not too much, please.
If I'm going, I want to go all the way. And so that's why I really enjoyed PAX. And I'm curious if I had been able to attend a convention or two before GenCon, I think GenCon might have been my favorite.
Interesting.
Because I think it just has the most. And it has the most access both to the little gadgets, gimmicks that I love, the t-shirts, the sweatshirts, the pillows, the stuffed animals. It has all of that.
I am so scared.
All the games.
She came up with a new segment for the vlog, which I think is a great segment for the vlog, but it's Shira. What's it titled?
It's I go find stuff that I don't need. I go buy stuff I don't need.
Yeah.
It's a fantastic segment. And it can just get bigger and bigger and bigger each year.
It's a real problem. Because for me, and maybe we'll do a series when you get home where you show me all the things that you got that you didn't need.
Okay.
Because that would also be entertaining. But for me, that's how we get board games, right? I'm like, I don't need this board game, but we can do a video on it. We can cover it. We can do stuff. And she has been figuring out the system where she can be like, oh, wait, Jesse doesn't want me to buy 17 pins and 36 stickers. But
if it's a segment on the vlog,
if it's a vlog segment and it's funny, then Jesse won't mind.
Yes. I'm working you.
Oh, no.
So, cons that I think everyone should attend next year. if you had to pick one con that you thought people should try their best to attend, which one would it be?
For me, because we're talking to our community, I think it's going to be Origins still.
Okay.
I think that's the top of my list. I think Philadelphia is a little bit more out of the way. The convention center sucks. And while I thought the community was the best there, I think we'll see that change and increase going into next year. My expectations for next year are high, right? If it was just based off of this last year and what I think people would have got the most from, I think PAX was probably the best of the year, despite my complaints and problems. But I'm not predicting that next year.
Yeah. I think, given how positive things have gone this year, I would probably also recommend Origins.
Would you?
Yes.
Interesting.
Even though it's not my favorite,
Yeah.
I think for someone who's going to a convention for the first time, and how overwhelming it can be, and how I'm predicting Origins gets bigger next year and resumes its full capacity, I think that it can have everything that they're looking for.
If you're already a hardcore board gamer,
then I think GenCon. I think GenCon and PAX. But GenCon first and foremost, especially if you're a huge geek.
Yeah.
So, that all being said, whatever the case, whatever you do, remember to do the important thing, get on, play some games, and buy lots of stuff. We'll see you next time. Thanks.
Bye.